So it's time for us to go and take a look and compare between an iPad and a MacBook and see which specific device fits bestly for you, if that makes any sense. Now, I've used both Macs and iPads, and there's only been one specific thing that I use way more than the other one, and that's MacBooks. But that's only because it works best in my specific use case. I know a lot of people who would completely get by with an iPad. In fact, I know people who would rather use an iPad than a MacBook. So the reason I even brought that up is because it really depends on your use case. It really depends on what you're trying to do in your life and what you're trying to get at, maybe later on in your life. I feel like with an iPad, this is a very good device because you're able to get into some sort of like professional environment and a fairly cheap price tag, meaning you can buy this thing and still, be able to use, if you're a student, if you're doing work activities, there's a lot of applications there for you that maybe will actually be better for you on an iPad. Even with the Apple Pencil support, that's a really cool thing. But with a MacBook, that's like a PC. That is a PC. So you're able to probably get not only a little bit more power, but you're also able to go ahead and find probably more applications that are more suited to you, potentially if you're using something like a PC. So keep that in mind. There is still a lot of overlap though between a MacBook and an iPad, but I will tell you they're kind of different, and it really just depends on which specific use case you're in. Now to break it down a little bit, if we're taking a look at like two iPads that are around the same price tag, now if we're comparing the cheapest iPad that I would probably recommend, which is about the iPad 9th generation, that is an iPad that's selling for $329. That is a fairly cheap price. That is much cheaper than the cheapest MacBook that you can buy right now too. And with that iPad, you're able to go ahead and get a 10.2-inch Retina display. You're able to get an Apple A13 Bionic chip, which is a few years old, but it's still decent. A front and back camera, Touch ID. You're able to get Apple Pencil 1 support, and you can also get that smart keyboard where you can go ahead and, use an actual keyboard on the specific iPad. So that is a really cool thing. At such a cheap price tag, you're able to go ahead and get into the Apple ecosystem. You're able to use a bunch of applications that are supported there, and that is something that's awesome. However, recently, I would say Apple has closed the gap between some of the power situations we were getting between an iPad and a MacBook when Apple actually announced the M1 iPads. So with the M1 iPad Pro, these ones came out a year or two ago. They're definitely more expensive. They're not like very cheap iPads, but they're still very, very good iPads. You can get them in the used market now for a little bit cheaper. So Apple has closed the gap between the iPads and MacBooks, especially with the chipsets inside. Now, there's still going to be performance increases. I would probably say MacBooks are still probably going to be faster overall, but mostly because you're getting a fan and everything inside. But I love these iPads because they're so cheap, at least some of them, and you're able to get into the system, and you can still get things like a keyboard and all that stuff between both. But this brings me to my MacBook. I use a Mac every single day. I've used, I have my iPads, but I always go for my MacBook. And the reason for that is because the applications that I use on an everyday basis require me to go ahead and use a MacBook or, even a Windows PC. But I usually use my MacBook because it works. I have my system set up in it. And like I said, the apps that I use, require a MacBook. The big thing is that these heavy, somewhat professional, applications, I've noticed there's always a, substitute on these iPads, but it's hard to find, apples to apples here. For example, some of the applications that I use on an every single day basis are things like Calendar, my notes application, Google Chrome, Safari, things like that. Every single one of those applications are on my iPad. So I do actually on occasion use my iPad for those specific applications because those apps I'm using every day and they are available on my iPad. However, with big applications that I use pretty much every single day, things like Final Cut Pro, full-on Photoshop, even though iPad has Photoshop now, Audacity, and some of the emulators and games I play, which I'll get into in a second, it definitely takes a toll, especially when you have to find complete workarounds when I'm so used to already using them on my Mac. So that's kind of the bigger issue here. Although I love my iPads and I use them still quite a bit of time, my MacBook is the main device I levitate to because of the applications that I use. So this is why in the beginning of the video, when I mentioned, a MacBook versus a iPad in your use case, it comes down to what applications you're currently using. If you're currently using applications that are, only for Macs, well, then you're really going to be stuck on the Mac ecosystem. You're just going to have to go there and you're going to have to get a Mac you can always find substitutes for all these major applications. I see it time and time again, year after year. You're able to quickly go ahead and, find another app that works, that, will end up doing what you need to do with it. The other one, will be fine. So those things are just the kind of things that happen. But with something like the iPad, Pro, for example, I do think there's going to be some time where Apple will probably go ahead and at some point port over some of these applications that I mentioned. They've already done it with Photoshop, but applications like Final Cut Pro and maybe even Audacity, there may be some applications that will fit there better. So it really just comes down to what Apple's going to be doing in the future. And in my opinion, the MacBook is still going to reign supreme. In fact, with the M1 models, you can actually get some of these iPad applications on your MacBook now. So that's another crazier thing. And there's probably some ways to sideload the full, like every app over to your MacBook. That's just something that's insane. You can't get a Mac application on an iPad natively unless you want to go ahead and get some like remote desktop application. Then maybe things will change. But there's no way to natively do it like we do have it on our Macs. So Macs are more powerful, in my opinion, just from that standpoint. Like I said, Apple has closed the gap between, the MacBook and iPad kind of performance thing. But another big thing is, again, what are you going to be using these iPads for? What are you going to be using these devices for? One thing I love about iPads that MacBooks don't have and probably will never have is the display. The touchscreen on the iPad is so nice. You can go ahead and basically interact with everything. And on top of that, you have Apple Pencil support. So you can just go ahead and add an Apple Pencil to your specific iPad, and you can go ahead and just, do all sorts of things with it. You can go ahead and basically draw on it. You can pretty much do endless amounts of things with that specific iPad. And that is something that is so beautiful with that device. In my opinion, if I were to go ahead and buy some sort of iPad or MacBook, having a touchscreen, if I could have a touchscreen on my MacBook, it'd be perfect. But the iPad already has that. And that's something that's so cool. And trust me, if you're in class and you want to quickly just take notes and you want to just, take a picture of something and then, draw on it or whatever, having an iPad that already has that back camera there, you can just quickly take a photo of the, whiteboard or of the projector, and you can go ahead and just kind of, take a note on it or whatever. Those things are so cool. You don't really have that type of capability on a MacBook. But I do feel like with a MacBook, I like the fact that I don't have to go ahead and have, a lot of different accessories going on with it to kind of use it. But that's because it's always worked best for me. I would say if you're on a budget and you want to save probably the most amount of money, probably getting an iPad is the better way to go. You're going to be getting a cheaper system, just a cheaper tablet, and it's going to be a very, very good tablet for sure. And I think that's definitely going to get you by probably all throughout college if you really need to. I do think though with a MacBook, if you're able to spend the money now, or even if you're able to buy one in the used market, you could probably find them for even cheaper than someone like even like an M1 iPad Air, to be honest, right? An M2 iPad Air, whichever one there is available now. And you could probably, use that thing for a much longer period of time than an iPad. I feel like an iPad, you have to probably switch out every at least every 3 to 4 years. With a MacBook, you could probably have until 5 to 6 years after. So especially with these M1, M2 models, they're definitely going to be giving you probably a better run for your money. So in that perspective, that kind of covers it up there if I'm being honest. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.